All right, everyone, welcome to this second bi-weekly meeting of SIG IBM Cloud. Please keep in mind that this is a public meeting and it is being recorded, and we will make the recording available online on YouTube. We have new folks join this meeting, which is great. Some of the folks went in the first meeting, so I just want to mention to everyone that if you're on this meeting, but if you haven't joined the SIG Google group, I would highly recommend to join the group as well, so that you can get updates on what's going on. We have agenda out there. Doug has kindly put, and Jake as well, put the link on the chat. So please take a look at the agenda. And today we gonna have Richard Thies, who is a network engineer working on IBM Cloud Container Service. So he will be giving an overview of IBM Cloud Container Service, and then we're gonna have just few general topics about KubeCon, which we had last week in Copenhagen, and some of the open discussions, and then we're gonna talk about some of the ideas. Ours is a new SIG. So we'll talk about some of the ideas on how to expand the collaboration here, and, that kind of thing. So without further delay, I will hand it over to Richard for the overview.
All right, thank you. So yeah, thank you all for attending. I'll take everyone through a quick overview of the IBM Cloud Container Service. I do work on the networking components of the container service, as well as handling a lot of things related to the kube components as well. So updates and new releases and patches and so on for Kubernetes. So as an overview, the IBM Cloud Container Service is a managed Kubernetes service with the goal to provide an intuitive user experience with ongoing cluster management on our side, IBM side, as well as giving users control on their side as well. With security, isolation, and so on to help users deliver apps rapidly, and also integrate with other IBM Cloud services that we have listed here, such as AI for Watson. And then it is available worldwide, including 6 regions and 20 plus data centers. I have a link on the bottom for more information for those folks that are interested in getting those details. We do support currently Kubernetes 1.7, 8, 9, and 10 in production worldwide. 10 is our latest release as of a few weeks ago here. And they are all, as part of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation certification program for Kubernetes, they're all certified Kubernetes conformant on those releases. So here's the view of the data center expansion for the service. You can see the regions and the data centers as well as the cities. And this is updated and maintained. You can see in the link at the bottom for the docs page if you want to keep up to date on the latest. But I pulled this yesterday, so hopefully it's current. It should be. It looks like it. Now, with the Cloud Container Service, we also have integration with our Cloud Container Registry. And you can see some of the details and value proposition for the Cloud Container Registry. It is a standalone Docker image registry with integrated vulnerability advisor support. And I should stop too. If you have any questions or if you guys would like to jump in with comments or related to the registry or the container service, feel free to do so. So let's talk briefly about various cluster management capabilities within the container service. So these are the topic areas, from simplified cluster management to some tool integration and so on. So we'll jump into each of these. On the simplified cluster management front here, and I'll show the UI after I get through these. The UI experience when you work with the container service and manage your cluster. Now, there are alternatives to the UI. There's a CLI and API interface as well. And then in your cluster, there's management done by IBM for your master node in your cluster. So that master node lives in IBM's account, and we manage that and handle patch level and security level updates for that master, and we manage the operations and keeping that master running. As far as making major upgrades to your cluster, so if you're looking at moving a major or minor release of Kubernetes, such as going Kubernetes 1.8 to 1.10, that you as a user of the service would initiate such an update to your master. But as far as patch level updates, that is managed by IBM and is done for you in an automated fashion. On the worker side, your worker nodes in your clusters are in your account as a user, and you have control over when you want to add and remove workers from your cluster, reboot them, reload them, or do patch or major minor updates to a worker. When you create your first cluster, you are given control to design it the way you'd like, from capacity, the type of workers or compute that you have within the cluster, and then manage the configuration of various networking storage components, so you can build a cluster with edge nodes, and we have doc for how to do such a setup or integrate with a VPN solution.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what we mean when we talk about edge nodes, or I can talk about it?
Sure, go ahead, Jake. That's fine.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess we've had a number of requirements from customers that want to have their application runtime on compute nodes that are isolated from the internet. And so we introduced this concept of edge nodes where, some of your worker nodes are labeled as edge nodes and they get tainted. And that basically just means that the only things that are going to run on those edge nodes are your load balancers and ingress services, along with daemon sets for monitoring and that sort of thing. But then, unless you're really doing some funky stuff with tolerations and node selection for your actual application pods, right, they'll always land on all of the non-edge nodes. And typically what customers will do is, their edge nodes will have public and private VLAN access, and then the non-edge nodes where their applications running are just private only. So this is basically an easy way to sort of set up like layers of isolation from a networking standpoint, so that your applications are running on basically systems that simply just are not accessible from the public internet at all.
Cool. Yeah. Exactly, and there in our docs as well. Guides you through that entire setup of how to build an edge node cluster. Cool, and then that kind of segues into some of the security aspects of your cluster and of the service. So obviously security and isolation is a huge component of using the service, and you want to have trust in that security, and the isolation is protecting your applications. So as we mentioned earlier, we have the registry with the vulnerability advisor to help with image security. Talked about the edge network setup that you can have, and your worker nodes being in your account, which you can isolate and protect. As well as if we look at the cluster itself or the worker nodes networking, we provide support for Calico and Kubernetes network policies to protect network communication within the cluster from pod to pod, and whether or not pods are allowed to do egress, or what ingress is allowed to those pods, and then likewise protecting your public interface of your worker nodes using Calico node level or host level policies. And then,
sorry, Richard. One question here. So there are a few ways to export a service on Kubernetes, namely Cluster API or Node Port. Do you guys support load balancer?
Yes, we do, and that's supported in the paid tier of a cluster. So if you get a free trial cluster, you wouldn't get load balancer. But yes.
But then if I have a paid, then I can configure my service to use load balance, and then you're going to configure the load balancer on the top of the proxy there.
You'll get a Kubernetes load balancer service, and by default, a default cluster creation would give you a set of portable IPs for the load balancer service. So I believe you get up to four load balancer services that you'd be able to create out of the box, with the ability to add more if you needed to down the road.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. And with that, you also get ingress support as well, which is on this slide, which is extending your cloud services. So not only can you get access to the Watson and other services, we have persistent volume support on IBM Cloud Storage, and then your IP and application load balancing. So that's the load balancer service in Kube, and ingress support as well. And there's integration with the IBM Cloud Access Management, so you can that integration allows setup of the RBAC policies as well for users and administrators. Now the goal, with part of the service, not only can you get all these cool features and functions by integrating with other cloud services in IBM, but also we want to provide a native Kube experience. So it's 100% Kube API tool set. So you could seamlessly move from just say deployment on your laptop to try it out in our cloud. And with that, maintaining that conformance through the Cloud Native Computing Foundation is critical. And so we continue to keep that up to date, monitor the status to make sure it's passing. And we provide you with, some of the common tool set that you may expect in a Kube cluster, such as the dashboard, DNS, and Heapster. And we look to expand that and modify that as Kube moves forward with other services or changes, like, for example, looking towards core DNS and so on. And as far as that, building on that, you have other operational tools provided through, our service at IBM Cloud that you could build in with logging and metrics, but also there's a lot of other popular tools out there on Kube, and those add-ons can be installed in your cluster as well. So that gives a quick rundown of the IBM Cloud Container Service. I was going to jump over to the UI. And as I do that, if there's anybody has any questions or anything they'd like to add at this time.
Just a quick question, Richard.
Yeah.
I was just wondering, I know you did mention that moving customers' deployment workloads, right, with the native Kubernetes support and container service. How is it with the Helm? So, folks, who are more into the Helm, right? They have their workloads, they typically do with the Helm charts. I mean, it's the same way. They can easily use any repository out there for the Helm, leverage Tiller out there, or.
So yeah, so exactly. Can you see my screen showing the IBM Cloud UI?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, great. So yeah, right off here, and lead in right after your question here is, yes, Helm is a solution we support. So if you go, right now I selected, just so you know where I'm at, I logged into the IBM Cloud UI and I selected the containers option under this hamburger menu on the side here. And you can see the overview page. I can look at my clusters. I talked about the container registry, which you see options for managing registry and vulnerability advisor. And then under solutions, you see Helm charts. So if I go ahead and select that, you get instructions on how to install Helm and some of the options available there. And then learning Helm commands, as well as you've got these charts available. So, and I mentioned earlier about the VPN integration, and we have a strong swan VPN integration, and you can go ahead and select that, and this guides you through and to the ability to leverage all these public and IBM charts out there to help manage those packages in your cluster.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Yep. So, and then also just to continue on the UI here, I do have a cluster created. So if I bring that up, and I can check all the locations I have clusters on, but I'll bring up this SIG IBM Cloud cluster, and you can see my ingress subdomain, the version of kube that we're at. I can look and drill into the worker nodes that are available in the cluster. And if I want to access right from here, I can get right to my kube dashboard and load that up and see the resources that are running in my cluster as well. So give that a minute here, loads up, and you can see my session expired, darn it.
You should just be able to refresh.
Yeah. There we go. So yeah, so you can log in and just like native Kube experience with the Kube dashboard. And if I jump over to, I believe, Kube system namespace, I can go ahead and check out my services that are available. And you should see that I have my service list. You can see dashboard, DNS. There's going to be the ingress provided capabilities as well, which is right here as well. So anyway, I won't go into too many details on that front. We'll go back to the cluster overview. So just to give you an overview of creating a cluster and what that view looks like, if you haven't done it already, just go ahead and select the overview, and I can create a cluster, choose the region that I'd like to create the cluster in, and you can see the list of regions that we have available when you select that in the drop-down. And some regions you can have the ability to have a trial cluster created. This is just a standard cluster in this region, and I can select the location, kube versions, my components on the hardware front, whether it be virtual or bare metal, and the various machine types, and you get the idea here. So workers and VLANs and so on. So pretty powerful. You can do a lot real quickly. And with that, I'd like to wrap it up. If there's any final questions or comments, we could go through those. Otherwise, we can continue on with the agenda.
Richard, two questions. Yeah. So I see here that I have to specify the number of worker nodes. First of all, this is great. The fact that I can just, one page just come and select and specify my entire cluster. But do you do anything in terms of scaling the number of worker nodes depending on the utilization?
So at this time, there's no auto scaling of worker nodes that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I can talk.
Yeah, go ahead, Kitch.
So basically, there is like a limited availability beta of a node autoscaler based on the upstream community code for doing node autoscaling. The reason we've sort of kept it in limited beta is just because we've got some changes coming to how we do management of worker nodes in our clusters, and so there's going to be a pretty significant overhaul that comes along with that, just from a simplification of the user experience for node management, et cetera. And it'll have some effect on how that node autoscaler works. So, you should expect sort of like a full GA release of that, I would say in probably about 4 to 6 weeks estimated, right? I mean, not like a commitment, but that's sort of like a general timeline of probably when you'll see the official release of the node autoscaler become available.
I see. Very good. One more question, and I'll let you guys go. You mentioned, Richard, that I can use object storage for my persistent volumes. What other kinds of storage class can I use on my cluster?
So there's an NFS plugin, and Kitch, what other ones do we have available right now?
Yeah, so the 3 that exist today are, as you mentioned, NFS or a file plugin, right? So these are all based on basically just IBM storage features and services, right? So the file base is using IBM Endurance file storage, and you get a variety of file classes where you pick, the size of the volume and the IOPS per gigabyte, that sort of thing, and then similar offering with block, also just based on the IBM cloud infrastructure block storage services on the back end, and similar storage classes that go with that. And then the S3FS or Cloud Object Storage based driver, I think is still just an incubation at this point in time. It's definitely, for the right use case, it's a very powerful tool to have. But we're just trying to figure out how we want to probably position that before we make it more generally available, just from a standpoint of you can kind of get yourself into some pretty hot water if you think that you can use, IBM Cloud Object Storage as standard persistent storage, right? It's really like, it works great for having, like the thing that is getting used a lot within IBM is for some of the analytic services where they're building a data set that's being used across a wide range of nodes. And so this basically gives them, very high performance access to that and a single point to do updates to that corpus of data. But it's not, you can't use it for like sort of your standard run of the mill persistent storage like you would use block.
Yeah, my concern is that the storage can get more expensive than the compute resource, especially if you are using endurance storage there. And you're doing one-to-one between one endurance storage and one persistent volume. That can be like the price of storage will be 10 times or more than the size of the compute here.
Yeah, so I mean, the great answer there is to follow the words of the great Kelsey Hightower and say, don't do persistence in Kube, use data services.
Yeah.
I think, we've got great integration with the IBM Cloud data services that are available, whether it be like some of the composed databases or CloudInt or Cloud Object Storage, et cetera. So we definitely highly recommend that you leave the persistence to somebody who gets paid to do it.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
So great. Anything else that anyone would like to see on the Cloud UI? If not, we'll turn it back over to the agenda then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. Hey, Richard, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was great. Yep, and Ed and Jake and everyone, thanks for the good discussion here. Lots of learning myself and others. So continuing with the agenda here. So one thing I want to mention is, as we talked in our previous meeting, this is being the second meeting of the SIG. Every SIG meetings we're going to have first 10 minutes or so talking about some of these IBM Cloud features around Kubernetes from the ICS, IKS, or ICP side. And after that, we can have our normal agenda. So for this meeting, there are not a whole lot of agenda. Folks are getting back from KubeCon, I guess. A lot more to go with the SIG. The second one, though, I have is KubeCon. So I was there, and I know Doug and many other folks, they were at the KubeCon as well as part of the SIG. We had 5 minutes to talk about the SIG updates. That was on very first day, well, actually the day before KubeCon started, called Contributor Summit. So I just wanted to give a little updates that in that 5 minutes, I basically just wanted to announce the SIG to the folks. We had about 191 contributors out there. And not having so much activity with the IBM Cloud SIG right now, I just wanted to let everyone know that SIG is it's here, and what are the purpose of the SIGs, right? What's the sort of structure of the SIG and that kind of things. And I think 20 other SIGs, 20 or so other SIG leads also provided the SIG status. And one of the things, I think folks wanted to talk was cross-SIG activities. So we don't have a whole lot of cross-SIG activities right now. I mean, IBM in general contributing to Kubernetes a lot. We have lots of developers out there. But specific to SIG, that's one of the things I just wanted to mention and to have a little more discussion in the future meetings. that if anyone think about or already working with someone in the other SIGs, right? For example, after the SIG updates, we were approached by SIG scalability lead. He's also one of the lead on AWS SIG. And scalability size, it's like, hey, if we can sort of work together, right? All the different cloud provider SIGs and do some of the scalability kind of performance, sort of testing and whatnot, and then see how all the cloud providers where they stand, kind of things. So that was just an example. I will be following up on that. So I'm going to talk to more with the team here as well. But any other sort of cross SIG activities, if you guys think of, or you are working on it, please bring it to the meetings or the mailing list, right? We're gonna have this bi-weekly meetings, but you always can have the mailing list discussions or on the Slack channel.
So on that,
yeah, sure, go ahead, please.
On the performance SIG, so I was curious if there's any specific requests for the cloud providers to do a certain set of performance testing that they all should, let's go all do this set of testing. What are they looking for? I mean, what kind of numbers are they looking to achieve, or what kind of scale do they want to test, whether it be services or pods or whatever, right?
Yep. No, that's a good question. I just actually put a link in the chat, Richard, if you can take a look. So I haven't, do you see the link? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So I haven't looked into it myself. Like I said, I just got back from the KubeCon last weekend. But here is one of the things they are looking and having some sort of criterias. And I think this is something, I would say, work in progress, right? But this is one of the performance comparison tool some documentation here. So it's something I think we want to take a look. I'll be looking myself. Like I said, I haven't looked at much, but this is what it's about, the performance related activities going on in that SIG scalability.
Yeah, and with SIG scalability, right? I mean, we're actually pretty involved in the Slack, at least discussions around SIG scalability. Although I don't know, I think that we've got some time zone issues with our core internal scalability teams in that particular SIG's meetings. But I'm not sure if they're going to put out a new call for potentially changing the meeting times. But I think one of the things that we have looked at is sort of, doing runs with KubeMark and some of the other scalability run tools that are out there. I think they're sort of alluding to that a little bit in these design details where the original tool only really worked with GKE and didn't particularly adapt very well to other, basically just like bare metal Kubernetes or the cloud providers. So I think that this is sort of starting to look at trying to, provide better coverage for just more generic Kubernetes systems for doing scalability testing. So, I think there's a bunch of areas on the scalability side of things where I think there's just some good, generally it's just good discussion and things like that. I think that's it for SIG scalability. I was going to mention some of the other SIGs that we've got some involvement in from the core team, at least. So there's a SIG policy that we have a little bit of involvement in, although it's fairly early days for the policy SIG at this point in time. And SIG security, again, that's not really formal involvement there, but relatively engaged in the community from a just discussion standpoint as far as what some of the security concerns are and what some of the strategies for addressing those issues are, that sort of thing. And then obviously there's I guess Doug and his team obviously have involvement in a number of the different SIGs across the community as well. But I guess so I think that sort of covers it.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Jake. And Doug, you have any thoughts there? I'm actually one of the Doug's team. So yes, we are IBM contribution wise, multiple SIGs we are working with, right? I guess we'll bring it to all the sort of IBM cloud related work under this SIG umbrella. So Doug, any thoughts you have there?
No. Actually, the one interesting thing to me was how many people actually showed up. Usually the European conferences have less people in the States, but I think we actually had more people in Europe this time than we did in the last KubeCon in Austin, which I think is a very interesting sign for the popularity of Kubernetes going forward, and obviously a very positive sign. I just thought that was probably one of the more interesting things.
I couldn't agree more. I haven't seen such a big uptick in any industry in such a short time frame in terms of interest and engagement.
Yeah.
And I think they were talking with the number head counts. Seattle, they're expecting not pretty much double, but 70,000 plus people.
Yeah, it's only going to go up. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, from 4,300, which were at the KubeCon last week. So it's just growing exponentially really fast. Okay, so that is really cool. With the agenda, I think it's just open discussion and ideas for any further collaboration. Like I said, our SIG is a new SIG, so and any ideas, it's open for ideas and any topics in future. One thing I want to mention is if you have any topic, please feel free to update into agenda. And you can update anytime, even at the last minute, and we can discuss. But if it's something you can put a little bit early, that would be great, so that we can bring related expertise, from ICS or ICP or from open source side, because we have folks working on different projects, different SIGs. So if you have something really want to discuss, which can take a little bit time, any earlier sort of discussion will be really good for the meetings.
Yeah, so Zadev, one suggestion. I was in a meeting with a client this week, and we had a presentation about Docker and Kubernetes on mainframe. And so it would be cool to have bringing some of those guys that presented there to talk about what are we doing with Z and Docker and Kubernetes.
I was just going to say I've done quite a bit of work internally with the guys from the Hyperprotect containers and System Z. So I'd be happy to talk to them about potentially coming and talking a little bit.
I thought that you were going to talk it, and so let's go and take it.
I can, but I want to give them a chance to sort of.
Okay. Sounds good.
We're gonna have lots of SIG meetings. So I think every SIG meeting, we have someone sharing their, expertise for first 10 minutes or so. That'll be amazing. So yeah, absolutely add Jake. So if you can help me find the right person, Jake, or you say if you can already talk to them, that would be great. Or I can reach out to, someone there and request them to sort of share some of their stuff.
I'll send a note out to them about the SIG and see if they want to try to get on one of the future agendas.
Okay.
See, this is being recorded. What do we do with the recording?
I'm sorry. What was the question?
I see that this meeting is being recorded. I was wondering what we are doing with the recording.
Yep, no, that's a good question. So we will be making this meeting available on YouTube. Right now, this is again being our second meeting. I need to do a little bit of work there. I'm gonna sort of have my own channel to have this recording, and then I actually already working with somebody on the community side to put these meetings into a SIG playlist on Kubernetes, so that people can watch it later, right?
Okay.
I'm hoping by next week or so we should have this out on YouTube.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. Any other topics? Anything want to discuss? One thing I want to just request everyone that please spread the word, to the folks you are working with, IBM internal, external, right, and let them know about the SIG. meetings, if not everybody can attend, I mean, that's absolutely fine, but there are other ways with the SIG mailing list, Slack channel, right? There's various ways we can collaborate and you know, help folks to work on Kubernetes issues, features in much faster ways, right? So, all right. Anyone, anything? Doug? Hey, Doug, and really appreciate you taking the notes. Thank you so much.
Sure, not a problem.
Really good at that. So great. Anything else, guys, or we can have this as a meeting and can meet in 2 weeks again.
Thanks, all.
Well, yeah, if not, then I'm gonna stop the recording. Thanks again for joining the call, and see you in a few days.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Okay.